Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're taking on a pretty big mission. We are completely fundamentally reframing how we look at true greatness. We spend so much time staring right at the peak of the mountain, right at that glorious finale, and we totally forget about the grueling and honestly sometimes devastating climb it actually took to get up there. So we're going to unpack a narrative today that challenges basically everything we think we know about winning.
Let's just dive right into it by challenging society's most basic assumption about success. Like, are those celebrated victories, those shiny objects we're all constantly chasing, are they really the ultimate measure of a person? Because we almost universally assume greatness is just built entirely on trophies. We see the gold, we see the confetti falling, and we just kind of assume, well, that's the whole shebang. That's the sum total of achievement. But is it really?
Which brings us to part one, the myth of greatness. Trophies only tell the end. There is just this stark contrast between what we think matters and what reality actually is. On one hand, sure, we've got the trophies, the grand finale. But think about it. Trophies literally only tell you what happened at the very, very end of a timeline. The real story, the true story of greatness, is actually forged in those quiet, incredibly difficult, totally unseen moments when absolutely nobody is clapping for you. It's really about what happens in the shadows, miles away from any podium.
Let's move to part two, 3 heartbreaks, the fall.
3. Just think about the absolutely crushing magnitude of that number for a second. Lionel Messi lost 3 international finals in a row. We're talking the 2014 World Cup and then back-to-back Copa Americas in 2015 and 2016. I mean, for an athlete who was literally carrying the weight and the expectations of an entire nation on his shoulders, to reach the absolute pinnacle of the sport only to get turned away 3 consecutive times, it's just unimaginable. When you experience that level of repeated compounding heartbreak, honestly, you have every logical, rational reason in the world to just pack it up and walk away. And in fact, he did. He retired. His actual quote was, "For me, the national team is over." Just let the heavy gravity of that sink in for a moment. A living legend actually gave up. The heartbreak was just so profound, the public criticism was so incredibly loud, and the sheer weight of it all was so heavy that he stepped away from the international stage entirely. It really truly looked like the absolute end of the story. But that brings us to part 3, the courage to return, the pivot.
Think about the sheer emotional descent required to get to this point. You go through absolute heartbreak, relentless public criticism, and just undeniable failure. But then comes the pivot, belief. Because after all of that, against all odds, he came back. And finding the courage to just believe again after so much darkness, that is what truly defines him. Actually, scratch that. It's why the final trophy itself wasn't even his greatest achievement. The greatest achievement was simply stepping back onto that field.
Listen to this really powerful realization. The World Cup made him a champion. Getting back up is what made him Messi. Just let that stand entirely on its own for a second. His ultimate trophy wasn't that piece of gold. No way. His greatest achievement was his resilience. It was the absolute willingness to go out there and risk a 4th heartbreak. Because, the championship is just a title, but getting back up, that is identity.
Moving on to part 4, the real victory, the universal takeaway.
And this brings us right back to our redefined concept of success. You see, sometimes the single most important victory isn't the one you get to celebrate with a massive crowd. It's not the promotion, it's not some shiny award, or getting public validation. The most important victory, honestly, is that silent internal win. The one that simply convinces you not to quit. So as you go about your week, I want you to ask yourself a question. What is the victory that will convince you not to quit? Really look for those quiet, totally uncelebrated moments that are actually shaping your own greatness, especially when nobody is clapping. Because remember, true greatness isn't the trophy at the end. It's finding the courage to return.